Well, greetings. Let me just share a bit with you about this climb of Kilimanjaro. My friend, the Belgian, myself, and two American soldiers who were stationed in Eritrea who were on leave, the four of us made our way from Nairobi down to a German hotel in Tanzania at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. They were the outfitters. On the way down, it's kind of interesting. We went through a little tiny town, and we saw a whole herd of baboons that were going through the trees and down the road, and the driver couldn't get through because they were using the road. I don't know how many there were, maybe 30 of them, maybe more. Some of them were picking fruit from the trees that they were going through and throwing the fruit at us. I mean, it wouldn't hurt anything, wouldn't even hurt the vehicle that we were in. It was just funny. But we got down to the hotel, and the outfitter said, first you'll need to get your equipment. So they had a storeroom, supply room, and we were all given special clothes. The guy behind the counter said, what size shoes do you wear? And I said, 12. And he said, is that American or European size? I said, American. He said, whoa. The biggest shoe we have here, American size, is 11. And I said, well, I'll just wear the shoes I have. And the manager of the hotel looked at my shoes and said, I don't think those are appropriate. You'll have to make do with these. And I thought, yeah, but my feet, I wear a size 12. And he said, I think you'll make it work, but don't try to climb in those that you're wearing. So I took the 11s and then found out it was so cold up there, we had to wear 2 pair of socks, wool socks. So I got 2 heavy wool socks on each foot sticking in a size 11 shoe. Well, needless to say, I had some problems with foot pain by the time the whole thing was over. But they had good equipment for us, special pants and shirts and sweaters and vests and fur pieces that were really important to us because it got immensely cold. We started out at 5,000 feet. There were 2 cabins that were put up by the Kenya Mountain Club. One was probably at about 11,000 feet, and the second one was at 15,000 feet. And it took us 3 days to get to the top. The top is called Uhuru, means freedom, peak, at 19,340 feet. It took 3 days to get up there, so we camped at these 2 cabins 2 nights in a row. But what was really interesting at the time, the hotel supplied us with porters. I'm going to guess there were probably 8 of them. They were Kikuyus from the Kikuyu tribe. And it was just amazing to see these people in action. Each one of them carried 40 pounds of camping equipment, water, food, everything we needed to get to the top and back down. They carried that on their heads. They were way out in front of all of us. They were used to making this climb. They were in extremely good physical condition. They led the way. They were the leaders. They were like a little army. And off they went. We couldn't keep up with them. But the other thing was, amazing to me, if I had to carry a 40-pound load on my head going up a mountain from 5,000 feet to 19,000 feet, I don't think I'd be singing. But actually, not all the time, but they would sing as they went. It was really inspiring. The guy that caught my attention was the guide. He had a tattered coat on. He didn't have any of the climbing gear we did. He didn't wear any special clothing at all, and I was surprised by that. He didn't speak English. We didn't speak his Kikuyu language. But he communicated with us in an unbelievable fashion. There wasn't any doubt in any of our minds what that guy was trying to say to us. He made it clear, and he was a good leader. He was a man you could follow and trust, and I'll explain that in a minute. The first night at 11,000 feet, we looked out just as the sun went down. We were above the clouds at that point. It was startling to look out, and all you see is cloud cover. Beautiful sight. For the most part, the climb up to that point wasn't very difficult. We went up through beyond the tree line. Trees grow up to a certain height, and there's not enough to support tree life, and then you end up in kind of a mountain desert region with special kinds of plants that are native to that kind of terrain. There were streams everywhere. There's ice on Mount Kilimanjaro. There's a glacier up there, and that meltwater would come down on the sides. It was beautiful, and there were all kinds of plants we saw that were really weird and are only found there, very unique. So we made it to the first night. They cooked a meal for us. It was quite good. They got us up the next morning, and off we go. Well, the trip from the bottom to the top was 40 miles, so we had to cover 40 miles going up that side of that volcano, and it took 3 days to do it. That cabin at 11,000 feet was associated with another mountain called Mount Mowenzi that was associated with that volcanic region. So the terrain between Mowenzi and Uhuru was like a desert. It looked like a desert. There were small stones, gravel, and there were a lot of larger rocks that were the size of a basketball, perhaps, strewn all over the place. It was all volcanic rock. But when we got into that area called the Saddle between Mowenzi and Uhuru, the next day the sun was out, there were no clouds, and I began to really feel weakened, and I didn't understand why. I was having a hard time. Energy was going, and I had a headache, and finally the head guide comes back, and he points to my head. I didn't have anything on my head. And he had in his hand a towel. And he hands me the towel, and with his hand motions that I need to put it on my head. Well, it was the effects of the sun. And that towel put on my head actually took away the negative effects of the sun at that point. It's really bright. It was unbelievably bright. So we made it finally to the next cabin at 15,000 feet. But I will say this, about a quarter of a mile from that cabin, I just about fell down. Michel de Koonen, the Belgian guy, saw that I was struggling, and he came back and offered a shoulder and an arm, and he didn't carry me, but he made it possible for me in an unbelievable weakened state to make it to the cabin. Well, like I said, I lived at sea level in the Sahara Desert. I didn't walk anywhere. I just drove a truck every place we went. I was totally out of shape, and I was a heavy smoker. All that took its toll. But de Koonen got me to that cabin. Well, that night, we were all tired. Again, we were way above the clouds when the sun went down. It was a stunning view. And we were all anxious to have a good night's sleep. So the next morning, the guide began to wake us up. And he shook us, and he had tea prepared for us. And I just looked down at my watch. It was really dark. And it said 1 or 1:30. And I thought, what the heck is this guy doing? And he motioned with his finger, get up. He didn't say anything. You knew what he was saying, get up. And he not only had tea prepared for us, but they had a breakfast. I forgot what it was, but it was good for the climb. And what he was saying was, you're going to make the climb now. And I thought, why would we climb in the dark? We can't see anything. It was really puzzling. All of us were talking about, why would this guy have us going up this final 4,000 feet, up this really steep part of this volcano in the dark? But we did, grumbling. Well, the other guys were in pretty good shape. Didn't seem to bother them as much, but I took off, and I'd walked about 15 steps. And this is pretty much, it's not a 45-degree angle, but it was really steep. And stones were strewn all over the place, and it was hard walking. There really wasn't a well-marked path. And I walked about 15 steps, and I just sat down. I couldn't go any further. I was breathing hard, and it was really a challenge. The guide comes back, and he never smiled. He never had any facial expressions that revealed what he was thinking, but you knew what he was thinking. He stood up. I'm sitting down on a rock. He stands above me, and he's looking right down at me. And he points up. He says something in the Kikuyu language, which I'm sure meant up, get up. And so I stood up, and I wasn't resentful of it. I actually appreciated his kindness, but he reaches down and picks up a rock, the size of a baseball, and he puts it up in my face. He didn't touch my face with it. And then he throws the rock up the path, so to speak, and points to it. Well, it was a clever incentive to move forward. But what I remember was I was only doing about 10 to 15 steps, and I wanted to sit down. That guy stayed with me probably for 1,000 feet. He didn't take me all the way up the mountain doing that, but he made sure that I was going to make it to the top. I'm amazed at that. He didn't want me to quit. He knew I would be resentful of my own self, that I would be a failure, and resent the fact that I didn't finish the trip. That guy was right there for me all the way. I appreciate that so much. You'll see pictures of him. Anyway, we get to the top. One guy from Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, one of the soldiers, he smoked all the way up. He got to the top and vomited. And then that started everybody else vomiting. I didn't vomit. But I really felt the influence of lack of oxygen. It was really difficult. But anyway, we get to the top. There was a National Geographic flag up there. There was actually a stainless steel box you could open, and there was a book inside. You could sign your name that you got to the top, which we all did. Then we wanted to explore. There's a glacier up there. But another thing that was up there, we were told this later, the French had been mining sulfur. There were sulfur fumaroles, apparently. Sulfur gas that would crystallize when it came into the cool air, and there was lots of sulfur. And they were mining that by sending helicopters up, dropping some guys who would work 8-hour shifts on top of that volcano, shoveling this sulfur into bags or containers, and then at the end of the workday, they'd take them back down with the sulfur. They were not there when we were, but that's what we were told. But we walked around on the ice. It was a stunning view, and went down into the crater, and it was just wonderful. Good feelings about having made it to the top. Took 2 days to get back down. Well, one thing you discover quickly is you use different muscles going up than when you go down. We were all tired going up, but going down was a killer because we were using the opposite muscles on the backside of the leg, and we were not prepared for it. At least I wasn't. We got down. There were two things that I remember distinctly. One was once we got to the tree line, which was about 10,000 feet, we entered the forest, and I remember hearing singing. I thought, I wonder what that's all about. And the trail was winding, so you couldn't see anything. But finally, we rounded one part of this trail, and here off to the side was a little clearing, and there was a little white house building. There was a white woman that had khaki shirt, blouse, and khaki skirt on, and all these little kids with little uniforms. It was obviously, I learned later, a missionary school, and here was this probably American or British woman that was the teacher for those little kids. They were all singing. They were so happy. I'd never seen anything like it. I thought, wow, this woman comes all the way out to Africa, and she's working up here in a forest in Tanzania, and she's got all these little kids. What a neat deal. I didn't understand at all what her purpose was at that time, but it really struck me. There was something good about that. Then we got down to about 6,000 feet, and out of the woods, we were in a clearing, and out of the woods came a handful of teenage girls, Kikuyu girls, and they gave each one of us, they had a straw flower wreath, and they gave each one of us a wreath, which meant that was our victory sign. We made it to the top. We got our victory wreath, and we all wore them very proudly. We got back down to the hotel, checked in our equipment. I looked at my feet. They'd been through war. I don't know how I got up there with size 11 shoes with 2 pair of wool socks. But actually, the damage to my feet was pretty minimal when I think of what I went through on that. But it was really fun. That night, we all sat in the lounge and had drinks and were reminiscing about our great conquest of Mount Kilimanjaro. But it's left me with some lessons that I'll share later in another talk that have been profound. That experience was really a good one, and I'm so thankful for it. So if you ever see the clouds open and you see a mountain in front of you, I guarantee you'll want to climb it. When we were there, I bought 2 spears. They were handmade, but these were made by the Maasai people. They were actual spears that would have been used for young men when they became men. They had to go out and kill a lion. They don't do that now, but they did that years ago. And I bought a map, a topographic map of Kilimanjaro. It shows the path we walked on. But the wreath that we got, I kept, and I sent it back in the mail to my parents. I still have it. It's a really happy reminder of a fun time. Made some good friends with the 3 other men that climbed with us. Yeah, great adventure.